The seas and oceans cover 2/3 of the surface of our planet. They are deeper than our highest mountains. You can sail the greatest of the oceans, the Pacific, and not see another ship for days. When it's dawn in San Francisco, it can be dusk in Sydney. On land, we may seem overcrowded, overpopulated. At sea, the space can seem infinite. But it's a space which has always been used, though over the centuries, the nature of this use has changed. Once, the oceans were a barrier to communications. Columbus changed that. As ships and navigation improved, the oceans became a means of communication and the arena of international trade. For centuries, too, the seas have been used as a source of food. To find this food in our times, the fishing vessels have had to become bigger. They travel further. They fish more competitively and exhaustively. Since the middle of the 19th century, communications cables have been laid across the sea and ocean floors. First for the telegraph, then for the telephone. Since the 1950s, there has been a huge growth in the undersea network of telephone cables. The early cables carried several dozen conversations. Modern coaxial cables like this carry several thousand. They have become the basic means of international communication. Well over half of our international calls go by submarine cable. Increasingly, too, cables for power are being laid under the sea. The most recent occupant of the seabed has been industry. Huge installations have been erected offshore to tap undersea oil and gas fields. A surface view only hints at their size and complexity. Beneath each platform extend dozens of wells. With all their supporting lines for power and hydraulics, the wells spread far away from the platform itself. Pipelines connect the platforms and bring the oil and gas ashore. And remember, this is only the beginning of our attempts to exploit a whole range of minerals from beneath the seas. So our use of the seabeds is accelerating, diversifying. But even so, we're still using only a fraction of their area. Isn't there room for all of us? There should be, and there can be, but there is a problem. Take the three main areas of seabed activity. The main fishing grounds, the most intensive concentrations of offshore industry, the densest network of communication cables. Around the world, they tend to group in the same areas, and frequently they overlap. These areas are the continental shelves, the shallower waters. The North Sea is one such area. So too is the English Channel. They are congested areas, areas with varied and intensive use of the seabed. The coastal waters of Southeast Asia have the same problem. So too have the Mediterranean and the east coast of North America. It is in areas like these that priorities can clash and paths cross. Every year there are as many as 100 breaks in the world chain of telephone cables. And this is the result. The International Cable Protection Committee, ICPC, was set up to minimize the incidence of breaks like these. Let's begin at the beginning. This is the terminal station for a transoceanic cable. Do we need undersea cables at all? Can't our communication needs be entirely met by satellite transmissions? We certainly need satellites. We need high-frequency radio, too. But we must have cables. Even in this age of the satellite, there has been no pause in the installation of submarine cable systems. This is because the three main transmission systems are complementary. The cable being landed here is a Trans-Pacific cable. If you telephone Europe from Australia, it's just about as long a distance call as you can make. If the call went by a satellite, thousands of miles above the Earth, this distance would be greatly increased. So much so that the voice signals would be delayed a little. A call by cable routed across the Pacific might seem longer. In fact, the signal route is shorter. The voice signals take a fraction of a second to make the journey. Cables are private, secure, and consistent. They have a long life expectancy. They are cost-effective. So we need cables as essential parts of our international communications network. But do they have to be where they are? Every new cable route is thoroughly surveyed before the actual cable is laid. And the surveying nowadays is a precise and scientific business. The optimum route must be direct, but avoid extreme undulations in the seabed. It must avoid other uses of the seabed too. The best route is then plotted exactly. It is followed just as exactly by the ship which lays the cable. Cable ships are equipped with a wide range of navigational equipment. They can fix their position anywhere in the world to within 100 meters or so. They follow the planned route of the cable as precisely as possible. Cables have been rerouted around changing fishing areas, as here, off Iceland. But it's an expensive business. And in areas like the Mediterranean, there's little scope left for rerouting. Such areas are too congested. There's no way a cable route can avoid every area of potential risk. So can cables for such areas be made stronger, more resistant to damage? Until the 1980s, most cable was coaxial. Its basic strength is in its core, a reinforcement of tightly wound steel wire. The cable is made continuously, and it's around this wire that the central conductor is formed. It's usually made of copper. Next comes the layer of polyethylene, which acts as insulation. For deep-sea locations far from offshore industry and fishing activities, cable like this is used. But for shallower waters, the cable is armored. More than a single layer of armoring can be used, often interspersed with layers of yarn. The main armoring is formed from layers of heavy steel wire wrapped around the cable. Cables can be double armored, as here, even triple armored. In certain areas, whole systems have been laid with armored cable. Despite the extra expensive manufacture, it's certainly an enormous help. But it can still be broken. For shallow waters, another possibility is to clamp ducting of thick steel around the cable. Here it's being done on board the ship as a shore connection is laid. The ducting protects the cable against abrasion from undersea rocks and coral reefs. But it's a slow and expensive process, impossible to continue through any great length of cable. And the cable still isn't guaranteed breakproof. So, increasingly, cables are being buried. Various techniques and devices have been developed in a number of countries. Many of the techniques involve the use of specially designed submersible vehicles. These vehicles are capable of unmanned operation on the seabed, hundreds, even thousands of feet beneath the control ship. Not every cable can be buried. Tides, currents, or geology might prevent burial. Nor can cables be buried too deep. They must remain accessible for repair work. But despite these restrictions and the much higher cost, burying cables is proving to be one of the most effective ways yet of protecting them and keeping them out of other people's way. There's one last and absolutely vital way to protect cables, and that's to let other users of the sea know where they are. As we've seen, the route of the cable lay is precisely plotted, and this information is passed on. Nearly all navigation charts now feature the routes of undersea cables. ICPC has ensured that a wide range of special cable warning charts is also freely available. These charts cover many of the congested coastal shelf areas. They've been useful to organizations seeking to tap the mineral wealth on and beneath the seabed. So far, the industrial development of the seabed has been mainly for oil and gas. In the North Sea, for example, cooperation has been good. But without cooperation, priorities could have clashed. Existing cables can be placed under threat in 4 basic ways. First, by exploration. By its nature, this tends to spread over a wide area. The second threat is from the production platforms themselves. There will be fewer of these, but they will drill a much greater concentration of wells. The third threat is from the anchors of the support vessels. In heavy seas, these can drag, a danger if ships are anchored too near cable routes. The fourth threat is from pipelines. Sooner or later, in a congested area, their paths will cross a cable route. With offshore industry, pipelines are the most common problem. It may be possible to relocate the cable, either permanently or while the pipe is being laid. It may be possible to bury a section of cable, so allowing the pipe to be laid on top of it. Or the cable can be cut and peeled back for the pipe to be laid. It can then be restored to its original position, but this means that the cable will be out of service for a time. Cooperation with the offshore oil industry around the world has been good. The North Sea has shown what can be achieved. But the offshore industry is in its infancy. There will be many more examples of clashing priorities to solve. But an encouraging start has been made. Ships and shipping activities have been a recurring source of problems for undersea cables. This is Singapore, one of the busiest ports in the world, where the cable routes pass very close to an out-of-harbor anchorage. To gain a hold in the soft ooze beneath, the ships have to dig in their anchors deep. Unless they keep well away from the cable's corridor, a cable can be snared. Dredgers need to take special care, as their activities can expose and dislodge even buried cable.
Reduce speed.
But with responsible operation, modern ships like this gravel dredger can work near other users of the seabed in even the most congested areas. Fishing, the oldest, most widespread maritime activity of them all, still causes cable operators much concern. On average, undersea cables are broken by fishing twice a week. ICPC and cable operators are trying hard to reduce this incident. This is a clam dredger at work off the North American coast of New Jersey. A number of cables pass close to the clam beds, and the dredgers can be a hazard even to buried cables. AT&T has developed a warning system for the dredgers, working through the Loran C navigational systems on board. When the ship approaches a cable, the warning light will change from green to yellow. The skipper can then change course away from the hazard. By the time the red alarm is activated, he should either be on a safe course away or take immediate avoiding action. It's a system which could help prevent many cable breaks in the years to come. Not all breaks are deliberate or even avoidable, but some are. Most fishermen cooperate in sharing the seabed, but some don't. One way to cooperate is to keep equipment in good order. The beam trawl can be a danger to cables unless it's well maintained. Even then, the leading edge can easily catch a cable. And that's what cable operators and fishermen want to avoid. So cable operators sponsored trial designs for new shoes to help the beam ride over submarine cables. Tests on land soon demonstrated that the new shoe designs performed well, but their adoption must rest with the fishermen. Commercial fishing today is harder than ever. To win their catches and their livings, fishermen travel far and wide. Their boats are well equipped. By the time this skipper lowers his beam and his nets, he knows he's close to a good catch. He should also know when he's close to a cable. But if the fishing looks good, he may go too close. And that's when he can get a catch he didn't want. The more powerful boats can break a cable. The smaller boats get their progress rudely arrested. On trawlers like this, it may be possible, by lifting and dropping the beam, to shake the cable away from the gear. If not, the captain has a problem. What's the effect of breaking or damaging a cable? Thousands of calls stop dead. Important data being transmitted can be delayed or even lost in the confusion. An intercontinental break can affect nations and people all over the world.
Ja, Operator. Ich habe eben mit Chicago gesprochen, bin aber unterbrochen worden.
Mira, es que tengo un problema inmenso aquí.
New York no, no.
Nouvelle-Orléans. Mais en Amérique, madame.
You're nonsense, Willem, ba mi soye.
Ja, wie lange würde denn das dauern?
Pero es imposible, te digo.
Oh,
mon Dieu.
Et me fait more.
Yes, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I'm trying to connect you.
Special departments stand by to reroute calls when a cable goes down.
Hello, Mondo. This is the Restoration Control Office here.
Gradually, communication links are re-established.
Oh, hello, Green Hill. This is London. Okay, according to plan? Okay, thank you.
Derek, Mondar have made good the Green Hill 8001, good on to the Green Hill 60804. Okay, Mondar, thanks very much.
Groups of calls are allocated to other cables or to satellites. But it takes time and money. So does repairing the cable. Around the world, at carefully chosen locations, the cable owners place special ships. These ships are operated, maintained, and equipped to sail at the shortest possible notice to repair broken cables. The position of the break can usually be determined from the shore terminals. The first job of the cable ship is to get to the location of the break as fast as it can. Once there, the ship will have to grapple for the cable. This could take up to a day, longer if the seas get too heavy.
Cable hooked, aye.
Once the cable is on board, the nature of the break has to be established. Could one of the complex repeaters be damaged? If so, the repairs will take a great deal longer. Then the armoring has to be unwound and the damaged section of the cable cut out. The cut cable can be tested back to confirm that the area of damage has been successfully identified. Then the cable must be re-spliced. This means joining up the central reinforcing wire and the principal conductor. A short area of polyethylene insulation must be remolded around the splice. Then the armoring has to be replaced, up to 3 layers of it. And on board there's no factory machine to help. Before being put back in the sea, the cable is tested fully back to its 2 shore terminals. On average, it will be 24 hours from the start of grappling to dropping the repaired cable back into the sea. But remember that in some parts of the world, it takes a matter of days just to sail to the area of the break and back again. So the cost of repairs differ. Let's say that it can be a sum far in excess of the value of the skipper's ship. And cable repairs have become much more costly with the new generation of submarine cables. In these cables, the signals are sent by lasers along delicate optical fibers. On land and at sea, these telephone cables are now being laid. Optical fiber cables have revolutionized telecommunications. They carry a huge number of signals, 10 times as many as the most sophisticated coaxial cables. The fibers are well protected in manufacture. A copper tube encloses them for 2 layers of stranding wire to be wrapped around. And all this is before the insulation and outer armoring is added. Optical fiber cables take up to 4 times as long to repair as coaxial cables. Deliberate damage to them will be an expensive business, especially if the breaker is held responsible for the cost himself, which he will be if he's spotted by one of the regular reconnaissance aircraft or patrol vessels. So the responsible skipper will sooner cut his gear than cut a cable, for he too relies on his communications. The different means of communication rely upon each other, and a break in the chain takes its toll of us in ways we cannot possibly foresee. We depend on our ability to communicate. So we need our cables just as much as we need fish from the sea or oil from beneath it. Sharing the benefits of each other's toil means sharing the responsibilities. And that means sharing the seabed.